Well, Barry, the last month's polls are essentially the same as the previous month's polls. The ALP's primary vote is at 30, the Coalition is on 48, the Greens are on 12, and that translates to a two-party preferred vote of 56 to 44 in favour of the Coalition. And if we look at the two-party preferred graph, we can see that the gap between the two parties is now at 12 points.
And the better Prime Minister figures, Andrew, what are they saying?
Well, this arm wrestle that has gone on between these two leaders since the middle of last year has continued, and in the last month, Tony Abbott led Julia Gillard by 39 points to 37.
And now the satisfaction rating for the two leaders, any improvement there?
No, neither of the leaders are particularly well regarded. Julia Gillard had a peak satisfaction rating of 48%, and that was in February last year. But then the government made the announcement that it was going to price carbon, and her numbers slid dramatically. She bottomed out at 25, and that was in September last year when the High Court decision went against the government with respect to its Malaysian solution. She picked up towards the end of last year following President Obama's visit, but ever since then she's sort of been bumping around 30, and her current rating is at 29. Tony Abbott also had a peak satisfaction rating of 48%, and that was immediately following the 2010 federal election. But ever since then, his numbers have been on the slide. He had a peak of 41 in the middle of last year when the carbon tax issue was at its most intense, but basically he's been on the slide ever since, and his last rating is at 31, and that's actually his equal lowest rating.
Now, what do you make of the debate between the Greens and Labor? What really is at stake there?
Well, we really need to go back to the last election and have a look at those results. Now, the ALP achieved a primary vote of 38%, the Coalition got 43.6%, the Greens got 11.8%, and the Others group, which is minor parties and independents, got 6.6%. Now, that translated to a two-party preferred vote of 50.1 to 49.9 in favour of the ALP. Since that time, the ALP has lost 8% of its primary vote. Now, about half of that has gone to the Coalition and about half of that has gone to this Others group. None of it has gone to the Greens. The Greens are basically holding the same vote that they held at the last federal election. Now, what the ALP needs to do is win back votes from the Coalition, not from the Greens. And the reason for this is every 1% of primary vote that the ALP wins back from the Greens only translates to a 0.2% of a two-party preferred vote. And that is because Greens voters preference the ALP at 80%. So if the ALP picked up 5 percentage points from the Greens and improved its primary vote to 35%, it would still only increase its two-party preferred vote by 1%. And on the current polling, that would take them to 45%. So they would still get hammered in an election. However, if they picked up 5% from the Coalition and improved their primary vote to 35%, then their two-party preferred vote would increase to 49%, and then they would become very competitive. So while it's important for the ALP to try to improve its primary vote, it really will depend on where those votes come from that determines what sort of impact it will have on their two-party preferred vote and whether they'll be competitive at the next election. And to be competitive, the ALP must win votes back from the Coalition.